His tour manager knocked on the dressing room door at 3:47 in the afternoon, and the look on his face said everything before he opened his mouth. "We need to talk about Dirty Diana." Michael was sitting in front of a mirror, still in his street clothes, 2 hours before the biggest show of the Bad World Tour's European leg. He'd been doing this every night for almost a year. 70, 80, sometimes 90,000 people. Every stadium in every city. The same ritual before curtain. But tonight was different, and everyone in that building felt it. Tonight, Prince Charles and Princess Diana were sitting in the royal box. The argument his team made was airtight, at least from where they were standing. The song was called Dirty Diana. The Princess of Wales was named Diana. The song was about a groupie, a persistent, manipulative woman who followed musicians and seduced them. The lyrics were not subtle. The guitar was louder than anything on the radio. And the British tabloids, who had spent the entire year looking for any reason to go after Michael Jackson, would not need long to write the headline. "Take it out of the show, just for tonight." Michael didn't fight it. He looked at the set list for a moment, picked up a pen, and crossed the song out. What nobody in that room paused to consider was what Dirty Diana actually was. Not a filler track, not an album cut tucked between the hits. It was the fifth consecutive #1 single from Bad. It had spent 6 weeks at the top of the American charts. The guitar work, played by Billy Idol's own guitarist Steve Stevens, was the most sonically aggressive thing Michael had put his name on. And in the specific context of that album, it was the moment where Michael stopped calibrating and just wrote exactly what he wanted to write. Crossing it off a set list was a small gesture with a cost that didn't match its size. But Michael crossed it out because he respected the real Diana. He just didn't know yet what the real Diana thought about the other one. The British press had been camped outside Wembley since that morning. Every tabloid in London had a photographer and a reporter assigned to the night. Not because Michael Jackson needed covering, they'd covered the previous shows, but because royalty made it a different kind of story. Any slip, any misread moment, any image that could be framed wrong would be on the front page by morning. That weight was real, and Michael's team felt every ounce of it. The backstage area at Wembley on July 16, 1988, felt wrong in the way that formal things always feel wrong in places built for sound and movement. Instead of stagehands and lighting checks, there were security details in dark suits, protocol advisors moving quickly between rooms, and a kind of institutional stiffness that had no business being in a rock venue. The smell of the place, equipment, sweat, the charged air of a stadium about to hold 72,000 people, sat uneasily against everything that came with a royal visit. Michael had also handed over 2 checks that afternoon, £150,000 to the Prince's Trust and £100,000 to Great Ormond Street Hospital. He'd arranged both months earlier, quietly, without attaching a press release to either of them. Then he stood in the receiving line and waited. The man who had sold out Wembley Stadium multiple nights in a row was being instructed by a palace aide on the correct angle for extending his hand. He'd been told exactly how to hold himself, where to place his hands, when to speak, and when to let the other person lead. For a man whose entire adult life had been built on the idea that his body knew what to do without being told, standing motionless in someone else's protocol felt like wearing the wrong skin. Diana came down the line. She was taller than he'd expected. She moved through the formal introductions with the practiced ease of someone who'd been doing exactly this since she was 20 years old. But there was something else underneath it. A kind of awareness, something that looked from the right angle like the same controlled tension he felt in the 40 minutes before a show. Not fear, just the particular alertness of someone who knows they're being watched and has decided for the moment to hold still. She was wearing a light blue dress. When she reached Michael, she smiled, not the measured version she'd been offering to the people further down the line, but something that reached her eyes and said she was honored to meet him. He told her the same. The cameras were recording both of them. Then Charles moved further along the line. Diana didn't follow. She leaned in slightly and dropped her voice to something just above a whisper. "Are you going to do Dirty Diana tonight?" The question arrived a half second before Michael fully processed it. "No," he said. "I took it out of the show. Because of you. She looked at him for a moment, and then she laughed, and a real laugh, not the royal one, and said, "No, I want you to do it. Do the song." Charles turned back toward them. Diana straightened immediately, her expression sliding back to neutral so fast that Michael would have doubted the whole exchange if he hadn't been standing in it. Whatever had just happened between them was already sealed behind her composure. The cameras caught none of it. Michael stood there holding one piece of information. The person the song had been removed to protect was now asking him to put it back. He had 45 minutes before curtain. The conversation with his production team was not calm. His lighting director's face cycled through several expressions when Michael explained what had just happened backstage. The show had been locked for hours, every cue mapped, every transition timed, the running order built around a specific sequence with specific spacing. Dirty Diana had its own light rig that needed to be reprogrammed from scratch. The orchestra needed to find their charts. The backing vocalists needed new blocking. The pyrotechnics had a timing window built around where that song was no longer sitting. "You can't redo all of that in 45 minutes, someone said. "Then we have 46, Michael said, and walked away from the conversation. The hardest part wasn't the reprogramming. It was that everyone in the crew had already mentally closed the night, had already built their evening around a fixed sequence, and now had to reopen it completely with no margin for error. What followed was the kind of work that touring crews do when there's no alternative. They went backwards through the show's running order, rebuilding the sequence around the reinstated song. Some lighting cues were reconstructed from memory. Some transitions that had been automated were switched to manual. People moved fast and spoke in short sentences. Nobody argued, because the decision had already been made, and arguing wasn't going to give them more time. At 8 p.m., Michael walked out onto the stage. 72,000 people reacted before he'd taken his second step. The show moved the way shows move after a year of nightly performances. Not mechanical, but past the point where you can separate the preparation from the instinct. It felt natural because it had been done 100 times, which is a different thing from it actually being natural. Smooth Criminal. Beat It. The Way You Make Me Feel. I Just Can't Stop Loving You. The crowd held the energy like the stadium itself was producing it, and the night had the momentum of something that wasn't going to stop until it was ready to stop. Then the guitar riff began. The opening of Dirty Diana doesn't ease into itself. It arrives, distorted, immediate, unambiguous. In the audio recordings that fans have been sharing and preserving for 36 years, the crowd's reaction is not the usual screaming. It's something closer to recognition. 72,000 people hearing a song they'd been told wasn't on the program. In the royal box, Princess Diana heard it. What she did in that moment, no camera was pointed at, but the song ran all the way through. Michael sang it the way he always sang it, not like someone executing a concert obligation, but like someone with something specific to say. The lights that had been reprogrammed in 45 minutes held. The transitions worked. The stage behaved as though none of the afternoon's chaos had happened. When Michael sat down with Barbara Walters in 1997, he told the story differently. He said he hadn't been able to put the song back in, that the show was too locked, the timeline too short, the technical systems too complicated to rebuild in the window he had. That version became the official record. The concert DVD released in 2012 under the Bad 25 reissue doesn't include the song. When fans mapped the running order, it wasn't there. But the audio exists. It has no good explanation if the song wasn't played. Collectors have had fragments of it for decades. 30 seconds, sometimes a full minute, of a Wembley recording where you can hear the opening of a song that officially wasn't played on July 16th. Music fans have spent years arguing whether it dates to that night or to one of Michael's other Wembley dates that summer. No one has resolved it. The official record says one thing. The tape says something different. Both have been true simultaneously ever since. What isn't in dispute is the conversation that preceded all of it, Diana asked. Michael heard her, and in the next 45 minutes, something shifted that Michael, years later, still found himself telling the story around rather than through. Diana died in Paris in August 1997, 9 years after that Wembley corridor and 6 weeks after Michael told the Barbara Walters story. Michael died in Los Angeles in June 2009. Between that July afternoon in 1988 and both of their deaths, they spoke regularly. Late-night calls, Diana dialing from wherever she happened to be. Michael's former bodyguard said she told him she felt Michael was the only person who understood what the specific pressure of that kind of public life felt like. The cameras that followed you, the stories that grew beyond any correction, the exhaustion of being a projection before you were a person. Michael said something similar about her in different interviews at different times. Two people who existed inside very different kinds of machines, who recognized something in each other in a 2-minute window that nobody filmed. The song Dirty Diana was written about manipulation and performance and the distance between who you are and what people project onto you. Michael wrote it in 1986. 2 years later, he stood in a formal receiving line at Wembley Stadium and had his most deliberate act of consideration turned back on him, quietly and without fanfare, by the person he was trying to protect. She didn't want the accommodation. She wanted the song. His management team spent that afternoon solving the visible problem. They looked at the guest list and the press corps and the headline risk and made what seemed like the obvious call. That kind of thinking is usually right. Most problems are exactly what they look like from the outside. But this one had Diana in it. And Diana, it turned out, had different ideas about what needed protecting. That's the part they didn't see coming. And that's the part, 36 years later, that nobody has quite been able to put down. So here's what this comes down to. The most powerful institution in Britain tried to sanitize one night of a Michael Jackson concert. The woman at the center of it all walked over to him and said no. And somewhere in the disputed space between an official DVD and a collector's tape, the song played anyway. What do you think Diana would have asked for next? And do you think the tape is real? Tell us in the comments.